Hello everybody, and welcome to this April edition of the Little Home Podcast. It's wonderful to be back with you guys. It's been many months since I've wanted to record, and I finally feel inspired to hold this conversation again and chat to you guys about what I've been making and what I've been up to. I'm currently on week 2, going on 3 of being in home lockdown with the coronavirus that's going on. I hope all of you guys are able to be at home as much as possible. I know that it is a privilege to be able to be in lockdown, and it's not the case for many people. So just sending my love to anybody in the healthcare system or anyone who just needs to pay their rent. So for anybody who doesn't know, my partner Tom and I built our little tiny house. I'm hoping to be able to put some footage in of the tiny house into this podcast episode, but we live in a 7 meter by 2.4 meter tiny home on wheels, which is parked up on family property land, and at some point we'll move it, but currently it's here. And so we're very lucky because it means that our rent is minimal and it's pretty much off-grid. We have wood heating and we can collect wood for free, so our cost of living can dramatically reduce with our income, which it's had to do. So we're very grateful for that, and we've worked hard to be in this position, but I'm very grateful for where we are at right now, and sending you all lots of love, and I hope that you are all well and safe, and yes. So it's wonderful to be here chatting with you guys, and I've got some finished objects to share with you guys. I might well record this in sections just because we are sharing this home and we are all home alone, so you might well see me in a range of different costumes. But let me start off with what I'm wearing. This is my Magnolia sweater, which is a jumper pattern I completed last year. It's by Camilla Vad. I think it was originally in Liner magazine, but it's now available as a individual pattern sale on Ravelry. I knit this out of a strand of Polwarth yarn, which is a grey natural Polwarth, by Tandy, which is a relatively local farm to me here in Victoria, and also a strand of cotton and lamb's wool mix, which was a lace weight in a kind of rusty purpley reddy colour, so it creates this really beautiful almost mottled effect. And this it's got this gorgeous lace work and twisted rib, and it's a nice shape for wearing over dresses because I wear a lot of dresses. So this is come out of the wardrobe for the first time. It's actually very cold today, so very autumnal outside, so yeah, I'm getting my autumnal and wintry clothing out. It's the first time I've worn it since it was washed and blocked at the end of last winter, or last spring, so it's quite nice to be wearing it again. I've got the fire going here, so it's very cozy. So yeah, how do we do this podcasting thing? I will share with you, I think I've been knitting quite a fair amount, but I'll share with you guys a couple of things that I have finished quite recently that are still in the forefront of my mind. And then I'll show you what I'm working on at the moment as well. So the first finished object, I actually had a very long hiatus from knitting. I no longer work in the yarn shop I used to work at, and so I kind of lost my knitting mojo for probably most of this year actually, or a big chunk of last year, which I'm finally getting back. And this hat actually was one of the first things that I knit, and it was really simple and really satisfying. I'm blanking on the pattern name, but I will write it on the bottom of the screen and I'll link it in the down bar below. It's I used one skein of Cascade 220 heathers in a beautiful kind of foxy red colour, and then a strand of silk mohair Ficalina, I think. It's one of the Scandinavian brands, in a beautiful, perfectly matching colour as well. And it's just a really simple ribbed hat with a fold over brim, but it fits really fabulously, and I love how the decreases at the top look in the rib. It's like my perfect hat. I absolutely love it. It looks really nice with a fringe. I won't put it on because I've got my hair up, but looking forward to wearing this. It knit up really quickly. I think it was on 4.5 or 5 mil needles that I used, and it would have been the equivalent of probably an Aran weight yarn. Cascade 220 is a light 10-ply, so a worsted weight, and yeah, so it would have been about an Aran weight in the end. Yeah, really good little stash buster. Recommend it for gift knits as well. What else have I made? This, oh my gosh, this actually really got me out of my knitting funk. I cast this on and I probably finished it in 2 weeks, which is saying something for the absolute mammoth size of this beautiful shawl. This was a stash buster and I just cast it on a whim and it just flew off my needles. I loved every second of it. I want to make another one. This pattern is Satellite by Andrea Mowry. It's a mixture of, where did we cast on? So it's an asymmetrical triangle. You cast on at this point and it's basically a mixture, there's no purling in it, it's a mixture of garter stripes, and then garter short rows here, and then brioche, 2-colour brioche. And it just keeps on going like that. So really it's only 3 sections. They're quite easy to memorise, and it just keeps on growing and growing and growing and growing, and it sits beautifully. It's like this massive schlanket, shawl blanket. But I absolutely love it. I love the colours. Let me see if I can remember what they are. So it was definitely a stash buster. I used, so these are actually 2 different colours. They're very, very close and similar. You can see them a bit better here. I used some Nunnabar yarns, which was white gum wool base, hand dyed with a random one of a kind sock yarn skein by Ochre, which is another local company. This here, the brown, is actually my leftovers from this jumper, so you can see what the full colour looks like. And then this kind of pinky, light pinky colour is actually Jamieson's of Shetland Oyster in their Spindrift, which I had left over from a cardigan that I made years ago, one of my first episodes. If you guys have watched from the very beginning, I'm just trying to remember what the cardigan was called now. It's a really, really famous one. I'm blanking. Anyway, so yeah, this was a fabulous stash buster. It's actually quite simple, very clear instructions. Andrea Mowry is a total whiz, and I just love how it looks. It's really fun on their old colour play, and it's actually very intuitive, and it's all basically garter and then a bit of brioche, but the brioche is very small sections, so yeah, it's really fun to make. And those are all my finished objects. So things I'm currently working on, I have got a few whips that are languishing heavily and probably going to get ripped out, so I won't talk about those. But I've got a sweater that I have just cast on, and I've also got a pair of socks I want to show you. I actually have one more finished object that I need to show you because that's so cute. Can you see this little guy? This is a little crochet mouse with a bell in it, and it's for a little someone who might come because it's one of her favourite toys. Hey, Nettle, do you want to come say hello? Do you want to come say hello? Good girl. Yeah. Ready? Oh. So this is Nettle. And this is Nettle's little mousy toy. We've had Nedor for just over a week. She's a rescue Russian blue, purebred Russian blue kitten, which means that she's a hypoallergenic breed, as much as possible for cats. We got her from a lady who desperately needed to rehome her, and she's only a little tiny house kitten, and she's an absolute love, aren't you, sweet pea? If you haven't heard about Russian blue breed, they are very, very affectionate and very human oriented, and just absolute sweethearts. So she's just going to hang out here next to me for a little bit. But when we first got her, I made her a few of these little crochet mice. One of them we have on a bit of elastic, kind of like a cat wand. If you've ever seen those, I don't know if you guys are cat people or not. But hey bud, this is one that she just bats around sometimes. Oh sweetheart, you're gonna go to sleep. So that is a little free pattern on Ravelry for a little crochet cat toy mouse. I'll link it down below. I'm afraid I can't remember the designer's name, sorry, but it's actually very intuitive and really well done. They're very, very quick to make. I thought they'd also be really cute as little stocking stuffers for kids as well. A little amigurumi style crochet mouse. You're quite distracting, aren't you? You're very sweet. So I'm currently working on a couple of whips. I have a jumper and I also have a sock that I'm working on. I'm sorry, you have to see this. This is what I mean. She's incredibly affectionate, aren't you, bud? Aren't you, sweet pea? So she's just going to hang out here. So the jumper that I'm working on is a pattern by Jen Steingass, who is Knit Love Wool on Instagram. She does beautiful colourwork patterns, and I've actually made a couple of her sweater patterns before. I think she did Traced. I've done Traced, and also I've done Silver Forest as well. Traced I think is an 8 to 10 ply pattern, and the Silver Forest is a 4 ply, I believe. They both turned out beautifully. So I'm currently working on this one. I'm blanking on the name of the pattern, but I'll write it down on the screen. It's quite hard to see at the moment, and it's relatively low contrast, which I actually really like, but it's this beautiful feather and fan design. No thank you. We're still learning that knitting is not for playing with. So the two colours that I am using is this beautiful mustard. The mustard is Cascade 220 Sport, and then this which is the postcard colourway, Brooklyn Tweed Loft, which is their 4 ply. So I have got a couple of skeins of this. I'm using it as a contrast, and they're relatively obvious in the ball, but they're actually quite low contrast in real life, which I really like actually. It's a relatively cool tone, but then there's specks of red in the postcard, which just really plays beautifully with the mustard. So this is coming together really quickly. I am a bit like that when it comes to colour work. I just get in this groove and I get addicted to it. I kind of almost want to do an all over colour work at some point. I might well do. But I'm really happy with how it's turning out so far. I've made an adjustment already. So I have chosen to do ribbing instead. This one calls for, hey bud, this one calls for a rolled neckline, and I've decided to do a ribbing instead. But yeah, it's really pretty. So I'm just going mad. I love seeing the floats on the back. I'm knitting this like a whiz at the moment. But yeah, the floats are really fun to see for colour work. So that is flying off my needles at the moment. I think I cast that on 2 days ago. And it's currently living in my beautiful Fringe Supply Co. bag that I picked up from Skein Sisters a couple of years ago now. I love this bag so much. I have learnt that with a little kitten, she's actually very, very good, and she's learning that we just don't play with yarn balls, but it's very tempting. So I'm learning to always have my projects hidden away in a bag. Even if I'm working on them, I'll actually let the balls sit inside, close it up, and have the yarn coming through, just so it's less movement, it's less tempting for her. Because we want to make you a good knitting kitten, don't we? I'm sorry. How does one podcast with cute little kittens around? Hey? Do people need some kitten love too? I think so. Corona kitten love. So we've had her for 8 days, and she came as a Lily, but she never really used that name, so she didn't come to it, or she didn't know that her name was Lily at all. So we were thinking about names for her for a whole week, and finally Nettle came, and it's perfect. Nettle, if you don't know, is a really medicinal herb, and it's fabulous for the immune system. It's also quite funny because I'm actually allergic to cats, and I am mildly allergic to her, barely, but mildly. I think my body's actually getting used to her now. But Nettle is also a natural antihistamine, so it was a bit of a joke name as well. But it's a powerful herb. Hey Munchkin, you're being super cute. Anyway, moving on. So my second work in progress that I'm working on kind of regularly at the moment is in this little hedgehoggy project bag that my friend gave me. It's the perfect size for like a pair of socks. It's really great. And I am working on my first ever pair of Woodsy socks, which is a pattern by Melody Hoffman, or B Mandarins is what her name is on, I think, Ravelry and Instagram. She's actually a dear friend of mine, and it's so wonderful to be kind of thinking of her and working on her pattern from afar. She's French. She lives in France at the moment, so this is quite a dark yarn, so hopefully you can see. It's a very textured sock design, made up of basically rib and floats that are attached in a really clever way. I won't give too much away because it's a paid for pattern, but this is the Woodsy sock design. It's a cuff down sock construction with a heel flap and gusset, which I just find fits my feet so much better than Fish Lips Kiss heel. I actually learnt to knit socks from the toe up with a Fish Lips Kiss heel, and I did that for a number of years, and then I switched actually. As soon as I realised that a heel flap and gusset heel meant that my socks would stay up, I ended up starting from the cuff down because I just find it's easier to navigate this heel when working from the cuff down. So if you haven't tried a heel flap and gusset construction, I'd recommend it. It's a little bit more involved when you first start learning it, but it's actually quite simple once you get the hang of it. I have a recipe in my head now that I just know. I use Chiaogu, I think they're the Sharps? No, that's Higher. They're just Chiaogu red lace in the 2.25mm 80 centimeter, and I do my socks magic loop. I actually use Higher interchangeables for all of my other needles, but then I have 2 pairs of these Chiaogu, I think red twists are they called? I don't know, red lace, which I really like. They have a really nice point to them, and they are my sock needles of choice. And yeah, I'm really happy with this sock design. I'm definitely going to make more. It's actually a very intuitive pattern. I'm hoping you can see it's a very dark colour. This is just some kind of burgundy, plummy coloured Cascade Heritage sock. I'm not a super fan of this yarn. It's just something I had in stash. I have a feeling it's going to felt and probably not be very strong. It's just very soft, which is usually the way. I think it's a merino nylon blend. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this sock pattern. All I need to do is Kitchener the toe, and I can't be bothered because I always have to look up Kitchener stitch. I don't mind it once I'm doing it, but I put it off. You know how it is. and then cast on the next one. So that's pretty much everything I've finished recently and am working on. As I said, I really lost my knitting mojo for majority of the last part of last year and the beginning of this year, and it's only actually the last probably month, I'd say March, that I started getting my knitting mojo back. I have, however, been working on some sewing, and not necessarily garment sewing, which is something that I normally do. But I have taken up quilting, which is fun. It's completely new and it's a learning curve. I'm working on a very small little lap quilt, and I'm also working on a very big quilt for our bed. I'm looking at it up there because it's a loft bed. I'm using linen from, we have a wonderful store called the Fabric Store, which is based in Melbourne in Fitzroy. So I got some beautiful linen from them a few months ago, and I've been working on those two quilts. I'm still working on the tops for them. I had actually finished them to the dimensions that I thought for both of them. However, I realised that our quilt for our bed, I want it to be a little bit bigger, so I had to purchase some more fabric for that, and I stalled. So I'll grab those and show you guys what I've been working on as far as sewing goes. So these are my two quilt tops that I'm working on. The pattern is a free pattern by Pearl Soho called Tiny Tiles, I believe. So I'm working on a little lap quilt here, all made out of linen pieces. This one has a navy blue backing with colourful triangles in the corners, and this is my absolute favourite, which is a queen-sized version. I'm not going to be able to hold it up, but I'll give you an idea of what it looks like. So I have, it looks quite white on my screen, but it's a shell colour, so like a pinky white, with these beautiful linen colours. I've got mustard, a like kind of indigo-y blue, a light green, a terracotta, a kind of plum colour, and a foresty green. And it's just a really beautiful, it's quite a simple pattern. It's basically you cut out lots of squares. So there's lots of squares of the backing fabric, and then lots of little squares for these guys here, and you just sew across diagonally and then cut away the excess and then sew them all together. So I would really recommend it as a fabulous first quilting project. Again, it's a freebie on Pearl Soho. And yeah, I am totally in love with this. It's a real learning curve for me. I have no clue what to do when these when these quilt tops are finished. I'm gonna have to look it up and work out what to do next and get some help probably. But I'm really enjoying the process. It's really nice just to kind of having a cutting out day for all the fabrics, and then just kind of gradually sew section by section. I've probably been working on it for about 4 or 5 months and just doing it kind of bit by bit. I'll have a big day of doing it and get a few lines done, and then yeah, it's really satisfying to see it grow. So I've been doing a bit of quilting. I can't wait for them to be done. So exciting. And I think that's everything I've got to share with you guys. I am hoping there'll be some footage of around our property. We've been working really hard in the gardens this year, which I'm very grateful for because we have a lot of produce at the moment. We're in the southern hemisphere, so April for us is your September, so harvest time, which means we have got tomatoes, corn, potatoes, a whole heap of root vegetables coming through, leeks, apples, and figs. We've got fig crumble in the oven at the moment. So yeah, sending you best wishes from harvest time here. I hope you guys are cozy and enjoying autumn or spring wherever you are in the world, and I'm wishing you really well. I hope you are finding peace and finding joy in the simple things at the moment. I know there's a lot to be fearful and worry about, but I also see a lot of beautiful, wonderful things happening as well, and a lot of people supporting each other, so it's really beautiful to be reminded of the good things. I'm sending you lots of love, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye for now. Do you want to come say hi? Oh, you sleepy puppy. Bye, friends.